Welcome to the show your parents, the PTA and the asleep sheep don't want you to hear. The Helios blog. Today, heated Gaza debate on Piers Morgan. Oh man, this is gonna be an absolute mess. I just know it.
The reason she's alone is because she's difficult.
Women are not accepting the bare minimum.
Women fuck men they respect.
All the women who say things like, I'm strong, independent, I don't need no man, like, y'all impress me.
Women just gaslight each other and say what they want to hear.
Reported by the Haaretz newspaper that the IDF, and I'm assuming you would have knowledge of this if it's true, ordered the Hannibal Directive on October the 7th to prevent Hamas taking soldiers captive. And this is something known as the Hannibal Directive procedure or protocol, an Israeli military policy that stipulates the use of maximum force in the event of a soldier being kidnapped, the premise being that it's better to kill your own than let them be abducted and taken across the...
All you have to do is fabricate some drama, and that allows you to use maximum force.
border into Gaza. Is that true?
Yes, hi Piers. That report was written by the military correspondent of Haaretz, Yaniv Kubovich, and cited mostly by BDS supporters and Hamas supporters and others who have a very vested interest in minimizing the damage done and documented the carnage done by Hamas murderers on October the 7th, and trying to put the blame of the 1,200 victims in Israel on the IDF, perversely, and not on Hamas. And the bigger picture here is that it may have happened. I have heard reports about it, and I think that in general, reports written by Yaniv Kubovich are credible. He's a serious journalist, and I take it with a lot of respect, and it needs to be looked into. And at face value, I wouldn't immediately rule it out, because as you know very well, and you have reported about it as well, October 7 was the most chaotic day in Israeli history. There was absolute mayhem on the ground. Israeli defense forces were scrambling to get down south to stem the tide of Hamas death squads and Palestinian civilians who were flowing into Israel to murder, to burn, to rape, to execute, to torch buildings, and to abduct Israelis. And it makes sense that someone at military headquarters would have made such, or would have given such an order. And I know that now the IDF is on the coming Thursday, and probably after that as well, we're finally going to see the first official and publicly available after-action reviews of the IDF into the events, the horrible events of October the 7th, the massacre and the...
Sorry, is anybody else just hearing scripted response? I swear like I've heard the same answer over and over and over using the same buzzwords. You guys let me know in the comments. Again, maybe I'm crazy, but that's what it's sounding like to me. Is it just prepared political responses? That's what it sounds like to me. That's what I'm hearing.
Killing of Israeli civilians and the abduction of Israeli civilians. And I think we will have to wait until then to understand and to have a better picture. But very much happened on that day. It was, I think, the most challenging military situation Israel has ever faced. And I think that extreme measures were taken because there were extreme circumstances.
Okay, but to be clear, are you familiar with the Hannibal Directive then? Is this something everyone is aware of in the IDF?
I am.
And what is your understanding of what it actually means?
Yeah, so Israel, I mean, the fact that now, sadly, on the 7th of October, 252 Israelis and foreigners were abducted by Hamas into Gaza is sadly not the first time that any of our enemies try to abduct Israeli soldiers or civilians. This is something that Palestinian and other Iran-affiliated terrorist organizations have been doing for tens of years. And the protocol, or this order, is something that used to be in place in the IDF, which was designed to prevent such a catastrophe from happening that an Israeli soldier or civilian is taken by terrorists into enemy territory. And the order isn't, as you said, to use maximum force. It is to use force that even may endanger the Israelis who are being abducted. It is not about killing Israelis. It's not about deliberately doing that. It's about using force that may even endanger Israeli civilians. And at this stage, I don't have confirmed reports.
Okay, so what are they saying? You can bomb your own guys? Is that the translation? Is that what I'm hearing in political speak? We can even drone the building or whatever that we think they're being held in. If the purpose is to eventually save. Again, this is the military that they're working for, right? The military that's willing to even sacrifice them.
From the IDF
There
that
it
say
is.
that this is actually what happened on the ground. But based on the reporting of Yaniv Kubovic, I think that's a trustworthy source, and it makes sense that may have happened.
I mean, the reason I think it's so significant is that many people have been challenging the number of those who died that day and were wounded, challenging the pretext that they were all killed or wounded by Hamas, but actually as a number, and no one's put an exact number to this, but a number of people on the Israeli side who died that day and were wounded.
Well, if you're using rockets, there's bound to be friendly fire at some point, right?
Were actually killed or wounded by Israeli fire.
And it's also possible, because Israelis and Palestinians look very similar, it's possible they wouldn't know. It's not like they're marked with a red color if they're this on this side and a blue color if they're on the other side. It's not obvious who your ally is and who your enemy is. They look similar, right? So it's certainly possible for there to have been friendly fire. It's not some ridiculously unlikely thing, but probably not a big number. I don't know.
And so the significance of this development about the Hannibal Directive, and it seems from what you're saying that you think it's highly likely it was deployed, is that it may be a number of Israelis were killed that way.
Yeah, Piers, it may be true, and it may have been in the chaotic situation on October the 7th when Palestinian death squads were roaming around southern Israel as they were finished raping and burning and pillaging, and as Palestinians were coming in. It may have happened that order was given, but let's not go astray from what really happened on that day. The overwhelming, vast majority of Israelis, civilian and military, were executed in cold blood by Hamas murderers. And no BDS journalists and no self-appointed Israel experts or self-hating Jews that we might hear from afterwards will ever be able to convince anybody that this was...
Man, something tells me that with friends like these, who needs enemies? Does anyone believe? Does anyone in the comments imagine if your own ally on your own side says that? I don't know. That's a bit, it's a bit cold, don't you think?
Wasn't Hamas's doing, and that a substantial amount of Israelis were killed by friendly fire and not by Hamas death squads. There is overwhelming evidence, visual evidence to the fact that this is Hamas's doing.
I understand. I'm going to go to Aaron Martin next, but just to be clear, Jonathan, I mean, the clear reality of what you've said is that if this directive was given, it must be very difficult to work out exactly how many people were killed and wounded by Israeli forces or Hamas. I mean, how do you know if a directive is given to open fire without constraints in order to prevent abduction? How do you know?
Well, that is something that they'll have to look into. And, it took Israel with the world's most advanced after-action review and genetic forensic detailing with dentists, etc., and sifting through remains of charred bodies. It took Israel more than 3 months to actually establish the amount of Israelis killed, and up until just a few weeks ago we were still getting reports of Israelis who were now confirmed dead and actually not taken hostage. That is the magnitude of the tremendous job here of understanding what happened on October the 7th. And of course, BDSers, Hamas apologists, Israel haters, and other Iranian propaganda.
I'm hearing lots of buzzwords here. Again, you guys tell me in the comments, am I just imagining this? Or is this really buzzwords? Are they just throwing around buzzwords? That's what it sounds like to me. You tell me.
They will go and they will pounce this with great joy, as if to say, oh no, this wasn't the Hamas attack, this was Israel's doing, and Israelis killed themselves. Okay. I think that is utter nonsense.
Okay.
Utter nonsense,
right.
Because this was a rampage by Hamas terrorists.
That is inarguable. The question is exactly who was killed by who. Aaron Marte, you've been listening to this. You've actually been reporting about this Hannibal Directive, I believe, for quite some time. You know, hearing Jonathan Conricus, who was a former IDF international spokesman and obviously was in the IDF, hearing him concede that this was highly likely to have happened, what is your reading of this?
It did happen. That's been known for a very long time from Israeli military sources and witnesses who reported seeing Israeli forces fire on them on October 7th. The difference is that now, finally, an Israeli newspaper, Haaretz, has acknowledged this, and more Israeli military sources have come forward. The reporting from Haaretz says, according to one source, that the order was to turn the south of Israel, that frontier with Gaza, into a killing zone, which is exactly what happened. It underscores that Israel has no concern for civilian life, not just inside Gaza, but also its own people, because it did not want to have Hamas take captives that could be used for negotiations to free Palestinian hostages. And that's been lost here. There are thousands of Palestinian hostages in Israeli dungeons. And a major goal of Hamas here was to take captives and use them as leverage to free Palestinians who have been in Israeli dungeons for years and years and years. And excuse me, I didn't interrupt you. I did not interrupt you. I did not interrupt you, despite your many falsehoods.
No, but what you're saying is disgusting.
Excuse me. I didn't interrupt you.
Here we go. You're white. Yeah. Disaster.
And you're whitewashing mass murder, which is the whole point of suppressing the truth about October 7th since it happened. We have not heard.
Oh, and I guess you are the bearer of truth? A Hamas apologist, you will tell viewers around the world about truth? A propagandist for Hamas, someone who spreads falsehoods and lies about Hamas and apologizes for them and tries to whitewash.
Can you stop talking now? I didn't interrupt you.
Yup, this is the tactic. We pay you to do this. Just talk over them. Debate? Nope, just talk over them.
Taking Israeli
You're a
civilians
propagandist
hostage?
for the Israeli military, which is a mass murdering entity. And the whole point of this October 7th propaganda and burying the truth that Israel killed its own people was to manufacture support.
Have you ever been in Israel, Aaron?
Yes,
have you ever been in Israel? Lately, have you seen it?
Yes, I've lived in Israel. Yes, I've lived in Israel.
Yes, have you been in the kibbutzim after October the 7th, Aaron? Have you been here? Have you seen the families? Have you met them?
Can you stop deflecting?
Have you met the survivors? Have you met the hostage survivors?
Can you stop deflecting, interrupting?
No, because
I understand why you want to change the subject.
As if you have any authority on the matter.
Okay, I speak as someone who's concerned with facts.
You speak as if you know anything. You speak as if you know Israeli civilians, as if you know what Hamas did on October the 7th.
I understand your job as a propagandist.
You haven't been here. You haven't watched Israeli civilians murdered by Hamas.
I understand you're doing your job, but I'm asking you to shut up now because I didn't interrupt you. You're a propagandist for mass murder, which is why you're trying to shut me up.
You're still just a
petty
Hamas apologist.
Stop talking. I didn't interrupt you. I let you speak.
Disaster.
For minutes. I did not interrupt you. Now, the reason why you went interrupt me is because I'm acknowledging the facts, which is that Israel did kill its own people on October 7th and hid that truth to manufacture support for its own mass murder campaign inside of Gaza, which has killed tens of thousands of people. That's the atrocity unfolding before our eyes right now.
Aaron, let me jump in here because, Aaron, let me ask you. I mean, it is quite clear from their own admission through the way they were live streaming a lot of the barbaric acts they were committing that Hamas murdered many, many, many people that day. You presumably accept that.
there certainly were atrocities on October 7th. Yes.
Right. I mean, how many people do you believe Hamas killed and wounded?
Well, the point is there should have been an independent investigation of this from the start, which Israel
I'm
has.
sure people,
because
I'm
but
sure,
listen,
but I'm just
think of it
asking
logically.
you.
Excuse me.
You're
Here,
a journalist.
here,
You're a
think
journalist.
logically.
You'll have seen all the same stuff as me. Right? You'll have seen Hamas terrorists openly boasting about the horrors they were committing.
Freaking disaster.
It seems to me that it is indisputable that the vast majority of people who were killed that day were killed by Hamas. Now, what is significant? What is significant to me is the revelation that this Hannibal Directive was issued means that there was clearly some people on the Israeli side who were killed by Israeli forces as part of this open fire without constraints, even if it imperils the lives of Israelis. I don't think we know yet what the split is in terms of numbers, but I think to try and pretend, I mean, you accuse Jonathan Conrickeser of deflecting, but to try and pretend that the vast majority of people who were killed and wounded that day were not killed and wounded by Hamas would also be a deflection of the truth, wouldn't it?
Indeed.
It would be a deflection of the truth to insist without evidence that the vast majority of people were killed by Hamas. We don't know.
Oh, now I understand. Yeah, it's, you know what this is actually, guys? It's a full-on propaganda war, isn't it? Now, which side is telling the truth? That's very difficult. It's what is it? There's always three sides to the coin. There's your side, the other side, and the truth. That's what it sounds like here. This is a big mess.
Because there has not been a credible independent investigation, which Israel obviously wants to stop. Now, think of it logically here. Certainly, yes, Palestinian militants committed atrocities on October 7th. But think of it logically. If now you have confirmation from an Israeli newspaper and Israeli military sources that a directive was issued to turn that area into a killing zone and to achieve that goal of preventing anyone from crossing back into Gaza. Excuse me, that's exactly what Howard took. I didn't interrupt you. I'm going to finish my sentence.
No, that isn't what was said.
Excuse me, if that directive is, that's exactly what it says. It says in Haaretz. Excuse me, that's what it says. I'll post it online afterwards.
Well, the fact that it says so in Haaretz doesn't make it true. And if you're citing a source, please be specific. And it's a matter of real consequences.
I did, and you're lying about my source.
The directive was to turn it into a killing zone isn't correct.
All right, well, hang on. Okay, hang on.
This guy on the left, to the right of Piers Morgan, has just dead eyes. Lordy Lord.
Hang on, please.
He's interrupting.
When you talk over each other, it's very hard to keep up with it. Let me bring in Gideon. Let me bring in Gideon because Gideon.
No, I'm going to finish my sentence.
Well, finish your sentence, and I'm going to go to Gideon because he actually has worked for Haaretz.
If one of the most sophisticated militaries in the world is employing a directive to turn the area into a killing zone and using its weapons of war, including Apache helicopters, then it's very plausible to assume that, yes, a large number of people were killed by Israel's own forces.
All right, Gideon Levy, I mean, Haaretz has written this thing, and it's gone around the world like wildfire, precisely for the reasons we're seeing in this debate, which is that it does, of course, now raise obvious questions of how many people were killed by who on that horrible, infamous day. What is your understanding? What is your... You've seen what this report says. What is your understanding?
After Yaniv Kubovich published his scoop, I SMS'd him, I sent him a text message asking, so Roger Waters was right. And he answered me, no, don't go so far. I've been to the south of Israel 48 hours after the 7th, on the 9th, and I saw a slaughterhouse. I have no idea how many of them were killed by Hamas and how many of them were killed by our own soldiers. But let's remember one thing. Whatever happened there, and terrible things happened there, and I am the first one to object any denial, because denial doesn't lead us to anywhere. But whatever happened there does not justify by any mean what Israel is doing in the last 9 months. And that's the main point. Was it partly by Hamas and partly by Israeli soldiers, or was it only by Hamas? Nothing can explain or justify slaughtering 38,000 people, most of them innocent people, most of them women and children. And I want to tell Jonathan, or Jonathan as you call him, not everyone who criticizes Israel is a BDS supporter or an anti-Semite or a marginal propagandist. No. There are many people of conscience who cannot see the scenes from Gaza, the scenes that we don't see in Israel. There are many people of conscience who blame Israel, and rightly so. And there are few Israelis who cannot see it and are ashamed for being Israelis when those things are happening. You don't need to label them as anti-Semites. They are people of conscience.
I wasn't labeling them. I was referring to our panelist. I wasn't labeling a lot of other people.
Sure you did.
Referring to our panelist because I know he was up next, and I've seen his Twitter feed. I've seen your Twitter feed, which is just flowing with joy.
Yes, let's all talk over each other. Let's all do that. That'll definitely help. I like they're not anti-Semites for disagreeing. Thank you. Somebody who's a proponent for free speech. Based on his accent, it sounded German to me, but perhaps German and Jewish? The guy that just spoke? The guy who's 1, 2, 3 to the right of Piers.
If I may, I'd like to bring in the only panelist who's not so far spoken, Rabbi Fleischer. Your thoughts about this?
First thing is, I want you to know that I served in Lebanon in 95 and 96, and in the Second Lebanon War as a combat soldier in the paratroopers, Israeli paratroopers. Yes, we had the Hannibal protocol that could take into effect because we knew what would happen if our people would be taken hostage. They would not only be used as a card, they would also be tortured and abused and raped and who knows what else. And we just know the incredible pain that would be inflicted on our people. And so our military has a protocol to stop that at all costs. It's one of the worst things that we can allow to happen is the taking of Israeli hostages. That's what's exactly what has happened. In fact, the Israeli army didn't do a good enough job at getting the bad guys on October the 7th. Had they done a better job and smashed the bad guys and really done a better job at smashing them before they ever came, we'd be in much better shape. So, we have continued to fight this war to rescue our hostages, to bring liberty and freedom to this region. I mean, I agree with everything that Jonathan says, but the other two panelists, for God's sakes, they, I can't disagree with the characterization that they are Hamas apologists. They literally are apologizing for Hamas on this program. At the end, Hamas is not a machine of rights. It's a machine of suppression. And Hezbollah is a machine of suppression. And Iran is a machine of suppression. Our job is to liberate the people of Gaza from the yoke of Hamas.
Rabbi, you know what's funny? It literally sounds like the United States talking. That's exactly how they spoke. If you remember the war in Afghanistan, the war on terror, right? It's literally this. Exactly, word for word. I wonder who he spoke to get his talking points. I wonder. Anyway.
Fleischer,
and
one
to
of the
liberate
problems,
this region from the jihad.
Robert, one of the problems, Rabbi Fleischer, is that Israel continues to refuse to let independent international journalists anywhere near Gaza. And as long as that continues, there is the ongoing. There's the ongoing. Well, it's true. I know most of my journalist friends who are war correspondents cannot get in there, and this remains this secrecy which Israel is insisting on having about the warfare it's conducting. I don't think helps Israel, because what it does is it leads to a lot of conspiracy theories raging, a lot of stuff that may or may not be true getting out there and being fueled on social media. But, I've, for 9 months or so, been having debates where a lot of people on the Palestinian side have said to me that on that day, October, on that infamous day, that many Israelis were killed actually by Israeli forces. And I have to say, I was very surprised when I read this report to see that actually there was a genuine directive issued by Israeli forces to do what appears.
Wait, is the implication that it's like 9/11? Where they say 9/11 was an inside job? Is that what they're getting at here? No way. That's I think that's crap too. Huh. Okay, guys, please. This is not my specialty, as you might imagine. I'm I'm more on the seduction side. But anyway, please give me some insight in this, because I'm sure you guys know better than I do. But that's what it's sounding like to me. I don't know if it's accurate or not. Tell me in the comments.
To have happened. Now, I don't think that diminishes the horrors of what Hamas perpetrated, but it certainly lends succor to those on the pro-Palestinian side who try to bring some balance to this. That look, unless you let journalists in to do their jobs, then when a report like this comes out, and journalists like Aaron and others have been reporting this for a long time but had it denied, it is going to lend support to people who think the Israelis have something to hide. And so my question for you, Rabbi Fleischer, would be, why doesn't Israel let the journalists in? Let them go and do their jobs.
Piers, you know, Holocaust denial is a famous form of anti-Semitism, and
but that's
right
not my
now
question.
we have.
That's not my question.
Hold on. I'll get to it.
I've not heard anyone denying the Holocaust on this conversation.
Yeah, he's. This is a classic. What's the word? Anyway, it's a deflection tactic, right? He doesn't want to answer the question, so he changes topic. This is how girls debate, you know, on whatever podcast or whatever. It's like that. You ask them a direct question, they answer by calling you a whatever or deflecting the conversation. Freaking disaster.
Well, I'm saying that there is a type of action out there, a type of anti-Semitism that is classic, that comes in the form of denial of atrocities, and we're having the same thing right now. Now, you want reporters to go in. It's a war zone. It's a war zone. Reporters slow down the fighting, and we're trying to fight back.
There are reporters who go into every war zone in the world.
Yep.
I don't think it's down to Israel to decide whether it's dangerous or not for war correspondents.
I think Jonathan is probably more, he's the person to go to with regard to...
Well, okay, but let me ask Jonathan. I mean, this is the problem, you know.
Yeah.
Freaking mess. All right. Well, we're going to end the video there. Hit the like, hit the sub, hit all for notifications, drop me a donation. Like Hunter M, Adrian L, Tom and Bobby, Dylan, Renaissance Press, Brian, Andrew, Alan, Armani, and Nicholas. Shout out to you, most recent purchaser of both of my books, Strategist Guide to Seduction and Quotes to Live By. By the way, guys, I know I say drop me a donation, but most of these guys that I have in the latest supporters, most, if not all of you, and shout outs to you, have bought my books. So thank you for that. I really do appreciate it. And as you can see, Nicholas H here, who's the top contributor to my channel, he's actually had coaching for many sessions. And he's contributed more than $300 US. I really do appreciate it. Like, again, it's contributions like yours that make me want to continue, make me want to keep going, right? So I really do appreciate it. Again, guys, if you want coaching, go ahead. Just message me at my email, theheliosblog@gmail.com. I'll slot you right in. Of course, you can buy my books at bit.ly/heliosbooks. I do have a Patreon as well. It's patreon.com/theheliosblog. That's where I offer early access content. Thank you so much for listening, guys, especially if you listen to the end. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.